Hey guys, and welcome back to the Pennies to Pounds podcast with your host Kia. And this is a podcast where we aim to dispel your myths, simplify difficult financial jargon, and rectify your own personal problems. This is going to be a great episode. I think I say this all the time, but it's because they are genuinely amazing episodes. Last week, you'll know we spoke to the Gen Z boys about all things Gen Z and finances. So whether you're interested in side hustles, starting a business, we even spoke about relationships and money. We spoke about everything last week, then have a look at that. But today, we've got an exciting episode. And I don't know if exciting and what we're going to talk about usually goes hand in hand, but we're going to make it exciting today. We're going to be talking about all things pensions, and to help me with that, I have an amazing person with me. Guest, who are you?
I'm Mr. Money Jar, and I'm really happy to be here, Kia.
I'm excited to have you here. When it comes to pensions, I feel like it's not something that people often talk about, especially not younger people. When I say younger people, I don't necessarily mean teens and 20s, but I think just people in general don't really talk about pensions. Why do you think people don't talk about pensions?
I think it's because the future doesn't exist. You know, like the future exists only conceptually, but it's quite an abstract concept. And when we think about pensions, we think about, you know, like decades in the future. All we really have is the present moment. The future isn't something that you can reach out and touch, but you kind of need to behave in a way that's sustainable. That means like when you get to the future,
Yes.
you can thank your past self for the decisions that you've made.
Exactly.
So that's why I think they're difficult to talk about. I also think things like auto-enrollment, which we'll get onto in the conversation, like a lot of setting up of pensions happens automatically and in the background, and therefore it means that more people pay into one, but then you're also not really aware of what's going on as well. So it's kind of a double-edged sword in a way.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Well, we're going to smash that down now and we're going to talk and face it head on when it comes to pensions.
Let's do it.
So let's start from the beginning. What exactly is a pension?
Yeah, pensions are terribly named. Let's just start with that. I think that I've been trying to think about like if I was going to rebrand them, because I think when you say pension, you just see people's eyes glaze over.
Yeah, they're like, oh my gosh, it's for old people.
Yeah, and like it couldn't be further from the truth, because it's essentially a tax efficient, long-term investment account, basically, that you save into over the course of your working life so that you can have money when you retire. And you can either retire completely or you can downsize and go into part-time. And it's super, super important that we realize this, because we're all living and working longer than ever before.
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, what age do you want to retire? I've been thinking about this. And quite often I think about, you know, older Kia, still looking lavish and living her great life. But, you know, sipping pina coladas on the beach. And I'm thinking, how old am I going to be when I retire? How old do you reckon you want to be?
Well, first, I mean, we know each other like fairly well. I don't ever see you retiring. I think that you're...
Does you ever retirement?
Yeah, I think like you'll always be doing this, something along the lines of you're a very driven person, very ambitious, and I just see you continuing to do that. I kind of consider myself the same.
Yeah.
I think for as long as I'm able to, I want to continue to work, because I don't see work as a bad thing. I think work is the means by which you like solve problems in society and make the world a better place. And as I've gotten older, I've actually seen some examples of when people stop working, they become really unhappy because they lack purpose in their lives. So I want to, as long as I can, still be doing something, like even if it's just like, what's social media going to be like? I'll add subtitles to people's videos or something.
Yeah, just do something so you're still working. Yeah, I think about that and I think I would get bored. So you're right. Let's talk about state pension. Because when I have conversations with people about pensions, they're like, you know what? It's either A, is for old people, or B, I don't need to worry about it that much because we've got the state pension, right? The government's going to look after us. Once you work, they're going to look after us. So let's talk about state pension. How does it work? And what does that actually look like when it comes to retirement?
Yeah, so in terms of what I think will appeal to most of or be relevant for most people listening to this, what we have in place at the moment is called the new state pension, and it was brought in 2016. And it's paid for through national insurance, so one of the many deductions you get on your take-home pay. And it's essentially an amount of money that the government pays to you once you reach a qualifying age. That age at the moment is 66. For some people born after 1960, it's increasing to 67. And for us, like it'll be at least 68. Like they're talking about moving at 68. And by the time we get there, it'll probably be 70s or whatever. So the idea with the state pension is that you work, you contribute to society through paying national insurance and taxes, and then the government gives you an amount of money until you pass away, basically. So the government almost rewards you for the work that you've done. In order to be eligible for the state pension, the maximum you can get is £185.15 per week. This equates to roughly £800 a month, 9.6k a year. You need to have qualifying years of national insurance. The minimum you can qualify for is 10 years and the maximum you can qualify for is 35. If you pay national insurance for 35 years, then you can get the maximum 185.15 per week. And it's also worth saying that if you need to take time off work, you can make up for those missed national insurance payments by paying them. And if you have to do childcare and that sort of thing, you can get credits like in its place as well.
I think that's really useful information for anyone who wasn't fully aware of that.
Yeah.
But I think the one thing that I think a lot of people listening and watching this will take away from that is that state pension isn't a lot of money.
Yeah. So when we talk, I'm going to try and keep this as jargon free as possible. So I won't talk about target replacement rates and all that sort of thing. But the idea is not a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Now, the idea is that when you get to a later life stage, you'll have paid off your mortgage, your dependents would have flown the nest. You know, your lifestyle will cost less than what it's costing now. But even with that, yeah, like I don't know anyone who's tried to live off £185 a week. I'm sure somewhere,
there's probably someone out there who's giving it a go.
Experiment,
right?
Yeah. It's not a lot of money, particularly if you live in a big city like London. But then we also have like private pensions to consider, which are often you access earlier and are used. The state pension often ends up supplementing people's private pension income.
Amazing. And you touched on it just there. So anyone who has taken it and said, you know what, state pension, I can't rely on it. I want to look at other means and other ways to actually build up my pension and my retirement fund. What other pension methods and pension pots are there out there that people can look into?
Yeah, so we've got the state pension, but then we also have private pensions. Now, this is the pension that if you are aged over 22 and earn over 10K a year and are in PAYE, you're probably paying into one every month right now, albeit the account would have been opened up for you automatically. And you probably got like a piece of paperwork about it, along with like your job contract and your staff handbook, and probably just thought, let me just
just move on, whatever that is.
What's my first paycheck going to be? At least that's what I did when I first started working. So there are two types of private pension. I'll talk about defined benefit pensions first. These are on the decline. A lot more companies used to offer these, and basically it's a pension that pays you like a final salary, it's called, typically based upon how long you've worked for the company and what your average salary was at that company. But this, from the perspective of the company, is quite a bit of a liability to have on your books for people that have worked for you. And also, people move jobs a lot more now. I think for our parents' generation above, it was quite normal to just like work for one company and then just retire, and then they would pay you and stuff. But now, if you meet someone that's been working somewhere for like longer than 5 years, you're like, wow, you must really love it.
Yeah, you must love your job.
What happened? So that's defined benefit pensions. Some people still have them, largely people in public services, teachers, civil servants, people who work for the NHS, that sort of thing. The second type of private pension is what's called a defined contribution pension. And this is this is closer to what I described at the start of the episode, in that it's like a long-term, tax-efficient investment account. And I use the word investment on purpose because it's part of the reason why you want to save into one if you can as early as possible, because you're doing it for a long time, and therefore the money doesn't sit in cash. The money is invested in stocks and bonds, and the further you get through your career, it's moved into like less volatile investments for when you come to draw down on the money. So, as I was saying, when you start working, your company legally has to open one of these up for you if you meet the criteria. The minimum that needs to go into one is 8%, but that full 8% doesn't come from your paycheck. 4% actually comes from your paycheck. You then get 1% in the form of what's called tax relief. So that's where the government goes, the income tax you would have paid on this, we will add it back into your pension when it lands in your pension account. And then 3% needs to be paid by your employer. So it's free money, basically.
Essentially. Wow. I think that was an amazing breakdown for anyone who wasn't aware of the two different structures.
Yeah.
And I think that's really good. So if we move on now, so we've covered state pension, we've covered essentially workplace pensions as well. If there's someone who said, right, do you know what? I've heard you. Cool. I've contributed to my workplace, but I've still got more money that I want to put away. What else can someone else do? Is there anything else that they can open up or place that people can put their money when it comes to actually still continue to save for their retirement?
Their retirement. You can increase your pension contribution. So the 8% that I spoke about is what I kind of, this isn't the technical term for it, but I do think of it as almost like a minimum wage pension. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is if you take your total pension contributions, if the average person was to do this and put their target retirement age in and put an 8% saving over the course of their career, there's going to be a shortfall for a lot of people. Many studies have shown that actually you want to be contributing closer to 12% of your gross income. Again, not all from you, but a combination of your contributions, government and employer contributions, 12%. If you start your pension late, that 12% actually goes up. I ran this through a spreadsheet. I did the numbers. It just so happens to work out that if you take the age that you are when you start your pension, if you start it later on, and half your age and put in that percentage for the rest of your career, then you'll end up with a pension pot that you'll be able to use in retirement. So as an illustration, if you don't start a pension until you're 30, that means that you start putting in 15% from that point and you lock that in for the rest of your career.
Wow. You are really a numbers guy, and I love that because I didn't know if you did that maths. I think it's a really good baseline for people to have a look at, because I remember we put up a post on Pennies a while ago on how much money you'd have to have in retirement to be able to live basically like the basic, comfortable and luxury. And I think it's around, you need basically a retirement pot that would pay you out around 33 or 35 grand a year to live a life of luxury. So I think a lot of people want to, but I don't know if people are saving towards that when they're retirement. Yeah,
there are a lot. So a lot of the studies done on, because I was doing research the other day on pensions, as you do. And a lot of the studies that are done, you won't find like a concrete, this is how much you have to have saved, because a lot of it is done based on what your income is over the course of your life. And that's why you have that kind of basic, medium, luxury type thing. It really depends on the type of pensioner you want to be. If you want to like go on a couple holidays a year, if you want to, give gifts to family members and stuff, that's going to require a lot more money if you're just planning on looking after yourself. And both are fine, it comes down to it. But the important thing is to start to think about the future, even though it's this weirdly abstract concept. The future, this is why the future is weird, right? Mm-hmm. I used to, and it's actually quite common to be asked in a job, what's your 5-year plan?
Yeah, it is.
Anyone who was asked that in January 2020 had to rip that up 2 months later. Do you know what I mean? We don't the future is actually very unpredictable and we don't know what it holds, but you have to plan for it. And the way that you plan for it is just by doing sensible, sustainable things early.
Yeah. Completely agree with you. I want to pose this dilemma to you.
Yeah.
That I have had a few times. So we have someone who is 22 and is earning over the £10,000 a year. So they are also enrolled into their pension scheme, right? Should they opt out? Because quite often I speak to people who are young and they're like, it's my first job, or it's my first proper career job, and I kind of want the money now. I'm gonna 60, 70, that's years away. I'm only 22, 23, early 20s. Should I just opt out and, start paying into it later on? Maybe when I'm 29, 30. What would you say to that person?
Well, I've used the word investment quite a few times in this conversation, and I'll say it again. We know that with investing, you get compound interest. And we know that with compound interest, it's actually time that drives the growth rather than way more than how much you put in. And there's that classic example of, you've probably heard it, what would you rather get, £10 million today or £1 that doubles
Yeah.
every day for 30 days. And if you take the £10 million on day one, then you've got £10 million. But if you let that £1 double for 30 days, it turns into £1 billion by the end of the 30-day period.
Yeah.
So that's time, that's days, but that applies to 30 years over the course of your career as well. I mean, you'd have to find a vehicle that would double, give you 100% returns every year. If you find that, call us. Yeah,
Let us know. I want that.
Yeah.
I want that, please.
Yeah. But the order in which your investment increases is still that exponential growth. So to the person who's really early on in their career, I would say, if you can, pay the minimum, because the minimum is what entitles you to the tax relief. Actually, no, that's not technically true. You get tax relief on any contributions, but the minimum is definitely what entitles you to the employer contributions, if you can. And then you can spend the rest of your energy, building a side hustle, trying to get a pay rise in your current job. Completely understand that that isn't the most optimum for the situation we're in right now, but looking to the future and being optimistic, you got the rest of your career to increase your earnings. Put that money in early, because hundreds of pounds contributed when you're in your early 20s is going to compound into thousands of pounds later on in your life. I've spoken to a few people who were like, do you know what? I'm going to retire in 10 years. My pension's like 4 or 5 figures. What can I do? And it's like, the simple answer is save more, retire later. You don't want to put yourself in that position if you don't have to.
Yeah. Almost, if you opt out, you're letting go of like a deferred pay rise. That's essentially what you're getting, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously you get paid now, which we get now when you're working, but then your employer contributions is essentially pay rise, extra money that you're going to get.
Yeah.
But you won't have access to it until you retire.
Exactly. And the access is the key point here. It's like, why is the government giving us all of this tax relief? And it's because of the age of access. So we talked about the state pension kicking in at the moment when you're about 66, 67. You get access to your private pension or your workplace pension at the moment at age 55. So that's the reason why. It's an account, you're paying into it every month, the money is being invested. It's only that you don't get to withdraw the money normally until you're 55. Again, those goalposts are moving as well. And it's going to go up to 57 by 2028. And by the time we're in our 50s, again, goodness knows
probably
what
whatever age it'll be, who knows?
I really hope it doesn't go up too much. But that's the reason why. That's the reason why we're incentivized. When you get to 55, you can withdraw up to 25% of the cash tax-free. And then you can draw down on the rest as income, so you'll just be taxed through the normal income tax, or you can buy what's called an annuity, which I won't go too deep into, but it's basically an insurance product which pays you a fixed income for a set period or until you die.
I want to kind of change the topic slightly.
Sure.
And talk about taboo and money.
Taboo, okay.
Yes. So when it comes to pensions, especially, there were some statistics that was released by Scottish Widows. They did a retirement report about a month ago, September, which basically showed that a lot of the ethnic groups weren't really relying on pensions. They were either opting out or not contributing as much because some of them were relying on their kids to fund their pension, or looking at other, maybe cash assets that they've got to focus on pensions. Why do you think money and pensions and all of these things are quite taboo in a lot of ethnic minority backgrounds?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm from a British Nigerian household, so it's like the minute you start talking about inheritance or pensions, like, are you trying to kill me?
Yeah, that's
kind of thing.
Way.
I think death is taboo. It's a difficult thing to talk about. I remember I had a go at writing a will. Was it last year or the year before? And one of the questions in there is like, what do you want to happen at your funeral? And it's like, let's not talk about that.
Just push that to the side. Oh my gosh, I don't want to think about that.
Yeah. Death is a taboo topic, and then within certain social groups, whatever the prevailing culture is, you may see a more pronounced version of that. But my belief is, who's going to win? What you want to happen in your brain or reality? Like, reality must win, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to have to face up to these questions now or later. And I think it's best if you do it now. Obviously, don't dive in and make your death playlist on Spotify.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine? Oh my gosh.
Like, this is what I want them to bring my coffin out to or whatever. But it starts small. Engage with it small and then build, because it's going to happen anyway. And I think that when it comes to death, there are ways of speaking about death that excite people, and there are ways of speaking about death that make people feel sad or who make people feel down. Mm-hmm. An exciting way to talk about death is to talk about generational wealth.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So if you're building up a pension for retirement, if you're taking out life insurance, if you're creating a will, this is all money that you potentially could pass on to the next generation. A stat for me that blew my mind is, I'm rounding here, but of the around 15 trillion of household wealth there is in the UK, 42% of that is in pensions.
Wow.
At least. I think I think I saw more recent numbers with a higher percentage than that, but at least 42% of that is a really key pillar of building wealth in the UK. The other four measures, by the way, are net property wealth, physical assets, and financial assets. Wow. So you'd think, looking at the news, that most of our wealth is in stocks or crypto or something.
Of course.
But actually, it's in this background investment account that everyone's just paying into every month. Employers paying into it, government's paying into it, not really touching it. And then 40, 50 years later, it's worth this huge amount.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is a great stat. I didn't know that one, but that is kind of puts me into perspective, like you said.
Yeah. And so it's just about finding ways, if you're having difficulty speaking to parents, uncles, aunties about death, I think we need to reframe the conversation around legacy and what we're building and what we're leaving behind, because I think that is an idea that everyone can get on board with. Why are we building up all this wealth if not to leave it behind, if not to make the world a better place?
Absolutely. You know? I think that is so key what you said that. I've had a conversation with my dad, and he started off jokingly saying,
your dad's super cool, by the way.
Thank you. I think he'd love that.
Really
he's
like
going to
him.
be watching. I think he is. He's going to agree with that. But I remember we had a conversation about, retirement. He's still fair, while away from retirement, but we're talking about it. And, he started this conversation like what you said, you trying to kill me off, you trying to get, trying to take my money. I'm like, no, but it was a good, open, honest conversation to have, because we were talking about his pension, how he's contributed over the years, what that looks like for him when he retires and he gets to use it, and what that looks like when he's gone. Obviously not anytime soon, please, but when he's gone, what that looks like. And I think having that conversation, open up. I mean, we've always been quite honest growing up, and I've been fortunate enough that in my household we've been honest about money, but nonetheless it kind of opens up that dialogue where perhaps you're like, oh, okay, where when I was younger, I had no idea. I'd like to think my parents were set up and good for me and my brother to be fine if anything were to happen. But having that conversation was like, oh, okay, I know that we are. Yeah. And to a degree, I know what's there, which I think is also good to know. If anything did happen, you know, I've spoken to people who have lost relatives and have no idea what they've got. Have they got assets? Have they not? I don't know. But I feel like I've got a good understanding.
And the use of that term asset, again, is like an exciting conversation to have. Your pension savings form part of your net worth. You know, that is a major asset that you're building over the course of your life, in addition to property, in addition to collectibles or whatever else forms part of your net worth. In accounting terms, it's a non-current asset. So that means it's something that you can't readily convert into cash, but it's still there and it still forms part of your net worth and kind of like how wealthy you are, basically. So again, I would just frame it around wealth building, generational wealth, making the world a better place, legacy. This is ultimately why we talk about these things. This is ultimately why it's important to talk about these things, because we need to flip the narrative. If you want to talk to in these communities, you want to talk about buying stuff. Everyone wants to talk about buying stuff, i.e. transferring your money to someone else permanently. For something that you may or may not use in the future. So let's talk about building as well.
Yes, I love that. I love that conversation. For me, I want to kind of, again, move it. I started working when I was 16.
Okay.
I had my first job when I was 16, and I started contributing into my pension when I was 22, auto-enrolled. And I remember getting that letter through the post from my job, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I remember I felt big. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm old now, I'm starting to contribute to my pension. But over the course of that time, I had a number of jobs.
Yeah.
So I contribute to a number of different pension pots.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are like that.
Yeah.
Who are like me, who've put some money there, some money there.
Yeah.
What can those people do when it comes to seeing how much they've got all in one place? Because I know it can be hard. I don't know how much I contributed in my first job versus the job after that and after that. What would you say to people who are in the same situation?
I would say that is very common. If you move jobs, so you start a job, they auto-enroll you, you move jobs, that pension account is still there. The money is still invested, so it's still growing. It's just that you're not contributing it out of your monthly salary anymore. If you change an address, it's a bit like when you change an address on a bank account, that's something that could contribute to your pensioners being lost. It's about £37 billion of lost pension money in the UK at the moment. So it's quite a common thing. Now, when I first started doing this, so like milestone for me today, Mr. Money Jar actually turns 3 today.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. Pennies Pounds turns 3 in 2 days.
Oh, wicked.
As well. Look
Happy
at us.
Birthday to us.
Happy birthday to us.
Yeah,
oh my gosh, I should have brought a little party out so if I
Yeah,
knew.
like a little...
I know.
Yeah. So, yes, it's very common. And when I first started doing this, there was one very sorry-looking pension tracing tool on gov.uk. Gov.uk is a very solid website, but I didn't really have a good time with that tool. But now, 3 years later, there are quite a few pension platforms or investing platforms that offer pension accounts, which will give free pension tracing services. Because what they're basically trying to do is to get you to consolidate your pension with them, merge your pensions into one and use it with them. So there's quite a few of them now. And quite a few of them don't actually obligate you to invest your pension with them if you trace them. So if you wanted to just see what was out there, then you can use one of the many free pension tracing services that's out there at the moment. Ones that come to mind, Pension B. But Pension B, I think, might require you to
I think they
do
might
your
do.
pension with them. But there's Money Box as well, Wealthify, there's circa 5,000. So use a pension tracing service. If you have worked in the manageable number of jobs, you can route through your paperwork or, contact an old colleague or call up the pension scheme that you were at with. Like this is what I did. So I moved jobs. I haven't really worked in that many jobs. So I just called up the old pension providers and then I merged them into a personal pension myself.
Nice.
But you can get a platform to do that for you these days as well.
So we've spoken about how people can save for themselves, but we were such a generational wealth. And there are lots of people who are going to be thinking about whether they had kids now or at some point looking to have kids. You want to set your kids up, right?
Yep.
I know for me, I definitely want to make sure that my kids are good when I'm here and even better when I'm gone. So is there anything in terms of pension-wise, maybe there isn't, but is there anything that parents can do to set their kids up now, whether they've got kids now or they're expecting to have kids?
Yeah, so something that parents and grandparents can do is they can set up a junior pension for their child. So it functions in much the same way as an adult pension. With an adult pension, you've got an annual limit of £40,000. With a junior pension, that annual limit is £3,600, but you only need to put in £2,880 because the government puts in the rest through tax relief. And this is a fantastic way to set up your child for the future because, again, just in terms of time, you take a baby, you set up a junior pension for them, that account then converts into an adult pension. By the time they reach these later on ages of 55 and above, they're looking at like a 6-figure sum,
100%.
minimum.
Let's set up.
And I think, something that I very much aspire to do for my kids, if I have any, is to be able to set one of these up for them. Kind of outside the scope of this conversation, but same with stocks and shares ISAs. You can set up junior ISAs for kids and start their investments going as well. And I think it makes like an excellent touch point for children, talking to them about money, being like, that we set this thing up for you. You know that this is something that we're saving into. So I'm a big, big fan of that. That should also be a key part of the legacy wealth building conversation.
Amazing. Timmy, this has been a great episode. And we're almost at the end.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. So to round off, what would be one or two of your key messages that you want everyone watching and listening to be left with when it comes to pensions and getting ready for retirement?
Yeah, I know that pensions happen very much in the background for a lot of us. And I know that retirement can seem like a very abstract concept, but it is just treat it like any other bank account. So if you had money in a bank account, would you just leave it, or would you want to know at least how much was in it? Would you want to have the login details to be able to see how much is there? And you can make it as part of your money routine to just look at your pension account or accounts, just to familiarize yourself with, okay, this is how much is in there. This is what is being invested in. That's the first thing. I especially want to emphasize this to my self-employed listeners, to my women listeners. 79% of people in PAYE pay into pensions because of auto-enrollment. It's a fantastic statistic. This drops to 31% of self-employed people. So if you're self-employed, super important that you open up a personal pension. If you come to mine or Kia's platforms, you'll see stuff about this. You can open up a personal pension. You can open up what's called a SIP, a self-invested personal pension, and you can contribute from your business into the pension and use that to reduce your tax liability. It's a very tax efficient way of saving for your retirement if you're a business owner. And if you're a woman, super important. Women live longer than men. There is a gender pensions gap, roughly double that of what the gender pay gap is.
Wow.
So it's super important that if you're a woman listener, that you take this into consideration too. Plus, when women invest, they outperform men anyway. So just get on it.
Love that for us women.
Yeah,
love it.
Get on it.
Timmy, this has been incredible, very informative, insightful. Where can people find your celebratory, happy birthday again,
Thank you,
platform and find you if they want to learn more from you?
I am at Mr. Money Jar. At Mr. Money Jar is in a jar of money. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. It's my only account. If anyone else tries to DM you, it's a fake account.
It's a fake one.
Send them 50 aubergine emojis and then block them.
There have been so many fake accounts made of us financial influencers. So yeah, I think that was a good one to put out there. Just at Mr. Money Jar. Everything will be down below anyway in the description, whether you're listening or watching. So you can follow Timmy and keep learning from him because he is a wealth of knowledge.
Oh, thank you.
Timmy, thank you so much for joining us. And we're back again next week. Bye, guys.